아, 다 등을 대초이나 시킵 그 어떠니 뭐당 뭐 마임 바탐치다 하는 등을 몸보지 오늘다 뛰는 거 뭐치기 멋진데 등을 그랑진 거니나 멋지데라 등을 첨보요 모존제 더니 등을 양력 등을 양하자 모존나 회나 등을 첨보 강세 오늘에잖아 동물 다 멋지데라 이르위 등을 지키고 그래 이르위 등을 더치래잖아 시킵 건 소한다 다 데데기 지금강도 로레다 요티다 근데 로르 그 킹가지 쇼네 때마다도 뭔가 되게 탐색하는 타라들들 라 뒤스타 다리 등을 삼기미 기파 침보즈 그 용서다 어저저 용서 눈존나 다 디모즈가 다리 제고너레
So some of the categories of suffering that I want to go through. Of course, there's tremendous suffering that afflicts humans and non-human beings alike. But specifically discussing the suffering that constitutes the human life, human experience. We have great sufferings and we also have auxiliary or branches of suffering. And so the first type of suffering I want to talk about is the suffering of change. And what suffering of change really means is that we could be having a fine, happy old time, and then out of the blue and unexpectedly some sort of tragedy strikes. And then in that very moment, all that happiness and joy that we were indulging in and experiencing is just gone. And then, of course, replaced by all of these inconceivable or rather immeasurable different types of sufferings that kind of plague us and afflict us.
다때 회랑 책임 소위 조거 회나 아메리카라 차정나더니 달로 가민이 끝나 화름juk 니르게 쳔보숑제 화름juk 니르게 쳔보숑데 레컴 몽보즈도 더니 뭐 야초요 나자가 뭐 동초요 나자가 더니 로르도 다뭐 탐치대요나 라랑 소소고 다가 파이라 다 원졸고너레 더 막독 되면 레컨디는 그 다가야나 루 몽부 그 샤우접지 잔지나 니막치크다리 레컨 탐치도 기단 영 서르다리가 런거 레갑자르고지다나 그 샤우접고지 대전도는 그 초아 라다리가 상록던 고지 디모고다린 교가 단 더초인나 그 가수 초버 쳤다나 따테로 무스인나라 드니 닌 초안도 그 남양은 결함이 비슷한데 잠수인지 세 달이 탁탁탁하게 하서 렌터고 요는 말에 얼로르다 긴스그네 나가 되기도 같은 점이다는 등물스가 그 다리가 딱 낙단 저기다는 등물스 종종균 dim냐 다리 니르 등물스가 요는데
맞아. In the course of life, how sudden change can strike. A classic example that I think of is, of course, the economic crisis of America, and how in one single day, hundreds, actually thousands of people lost their jobs, and entire office buildings had to close. And it was in that one moment, what seemed to be up until that point to be a very stable and reliable livelihood and source of income was just gone. And all of these people found themselves facing this economic crisis. And so all of those many, many years of work and investment in their jobs and in their lives were just in one single day just destroyed. And so when you think about that, of course, one might be inclined to think, oh, my livelihood is, so stable, and, my job, everything's just going to be there forever. But nobody can guarantee this. Nobody can guarantee this because it is the nature of sudden change. Sudden conditions can arise out of the blue unexpectedly. And what you thought was so stable and guaranteed is suddenly nowhere to be found. And the name of this, what we call this, is the suffering of change.
드니 다 치레즈나 베르난 예리 등을도 드니 자창 있나라는 자창 제동 이하여 사이나양 지킨 가리근 삼고 드니 다리가 딱 잔토를 개외다는 테마토도 드니 지 릉거 흥아르기 다리가 되기 대소 탐쳤다는 가상 매박을 송하다 양 쌀든 소알 길고지요 네스 몽어도 요건데
And of course, another example of the suffering of change is, of course, these relationships and marriages that suddenly end in divorce, and then these people find themselves facing like a completely different life out of the blue after all these years of being together.
때단 잡아주셨다. 그 등을 침보자더니 등을지 등을. 다 등을지 등을도 체세인데다나 등을 찌 뇽진데야 등을 침보 찌 당하요. 양팀 따로 마땅진데 양 등을 침보 찌요. 다 등을 몽즈도 녀찌가 때니 리토와 쇼인데 회나 멍가리 되는더니 낙 나이다는 더니 다 하정 등을 뇽거 요진도나 양 다리 자층 거나 양 다리가 지 나다먼다 몽원 받기다나 대진도 다 파시위스당아 마시기다나 대진도는 지금 리메니스당아 더양 잠바가 다리가 네츠몽 쇼이다나 먹지가 다 당선이나 먹지가 등을 몽부 요차가는 뭐 하정 몽즈도 어쨌긴 소위 좋거나 양 망가요 오늘 팀양아 다리 등을 지 등을 세고래.
And so, like, for example, the suffering of change is one type of suffering, and then, of course, there's the suffering on top of suffering. That's the other type, it's called compounded suffering. And this suffering is defined as experiencing one type of suffering, and then while that suffering is still happening, before that suffering has been alleviated, a new type of suffering, again, is compounding that, and one single person has to experience that. So, for example, let's say someone is sick and then on top of that they have, relationship troubles in the house. Or let's say somebody's father dies and before they are finished grieving for their father, then their mother dies and something like that. Or somebody's really suffering some disease or illness and then all other kinds of dramas and conflicts occur in their lives and in their house. So it means one single person has to experience different types of suffering, one compounding another, compounding another.
다더니 등을 침복지가 따로 차원 덥식 그 등을 센데 다 차원 덥식 그 등을 세기도 더니 파르 따스르 그 원도 시내나 등을 따리 임박사로 문 못어 봐감 만나다리 등을 심하고 지지라서 그냥 하세 건데 따뜻 치모진데 제디 당상을 치긴 소화가 쳤더나 더니 지 파르 따스르 그 원도 시나 파르치 등을 몇 봤다고 대왔다고 요나요 돈도 대 등을 그 지지리다 원데 회나 당상 다 제리그 초트이나 તને તારીગ 지르지 딱 지르진도 다리가 대 기르담 기르지 기로다는 장랑금 개바 탐치다야 샤출 몽즈고 건데 제타는 가테 다리 지르진도 기르비 제링도 소인이나 파르츠 따는 거한도 지나 뜻이 공총총다나 대진도 지 스탑 대본을 티모 옛날에다 동거당도 다 티나나 다리 젠기르그 그 공부 모즈도 같이 요치즈이나 다 남식은 이렇게나 땡아튼 라서 바가 지키기 난다가 만나다리가 티 머르시마 what's 기계 체크 다리가 시가라 다 띠다리 뜨드 름바 전담 체대 계령 다스탄 같이 다리 머르고 문 맞을지 잔지나 머르디 데니 로 접촉 몽어가 지서감 데니 다리가 다 머르시마 다리가 데니 뭐 탐측 다리가 시가나 제고난다가 띠 리보거 땅아 다리 문 톰기즈요네나 띠냐 다리 차원듯이 그런 걸 세고는
And the third type of suffering is known as the broad suffering, the all-pervasive suffering of conditioned phenomena. And what this really means is that it means that everything we experience, even when we perceive it as being joyful and pleasurable, is actually itself perpetuating the causes of our future suffering. And so, although in the present or superficial appearance, we may say that this is only happiness, this is only enjoyable, that it couldn't possibly be the nature of suffering, but that very thing that we are indulging in and engaging in that we find to bring us pleasure and happiness is going to be creating the causes for suffering for us in the future. And so, in actuality, it is the nature of suffering, but in its temporary appearance, to us and how we perceive it, we may not recognize it as suffering. And an example that comes to mind is genetically modified organisms and the engineering of toxic pesticides into the seeds that become the food that we consume. And although there's a large debate going on about the harm or lack thereof of this sort of genetic modification, and of course it might seem quite easy to just eat genetically modified food, and it's easier to eat, and you can like not see a tangible immediate effect. And yet there are many scientists who are finding that because of the chemicals and the kind of foreign synthetic substances that are going into the very seeds of the food that we are then eating, then even though it may not become apparent right away, in the long term it creates all sorts of different illnesses, imbalances, and even if in a single lifetime of a person it may not be so evident, but it affects how it affects even like the DNA structuring, or the state of the children of that, or the offspring of that person that's eating these GMOs. And the effect may not even become known for like generations. But the fact that something we do now is creating a negative effect and suffering in the future, this is an example of what we call the suffering of all-pervasive suffering of conditioned existence.